Holy Gospel according to St. John, the 18th chapter. Glory to you, O Lord. Jesus answered, "My kingdom is not from this world. If my kingdom were from this world, my followers would be fighting to keep me from being handed over to the Jews. But as it is, my kingdom is not from here." Pilate asked him, "So you are a king?" And Jesus answered, "You say that I am a king. But for this I was born, and for this I came into the world, to testify to the truth. Everyone who belongs to the truth listens to my voice." The Gospel of the Lord. Please be seated, and at this time, I invite all the youth to come on up for a message. On down. All right. Come on up, everybody. Hi. Do you want to sit right here? Hey, guys. Anybody want to take a seat? It's a good spot. Brooklyn, you want to come sit? No. All right. So, now, there's this expression. So there's these words that people say when they say, if everybody was doing, sorry, I lost my voice there. If everybody was doing this thing, would you do it too? Okay, so if everybody's chewing gum, right? Can everybody act like they're chewing gum? Right? You're actually, well, then you don't have to fake it. You can just chew gum. So chewing gum, right? Okay, so everybody's chewing gum, and maybe one person didn't. And we'd all say, well, we're all chewing gum. How come you're not chewing gum? Because they didn't want to. Because they thought it wasn't right to chew gum. Now, it's okay to chew gum. But that's kind of what we heard in this story. With these guys with the funny names. Their names are Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Okay? And what these three guys won't do is this king built this huge statue of his God. Okay? And he said, everybody has to worship. Everybody has to make music and pray to this God. And the three guys, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, they said, no, we have a God. And that God said not to worship anybody else. Okay? So there's only one God. And they're going to worship him and not anybody else. Okay? And so what happens was this king didn't like it. So he threw them into a furnace with all this fire. And you know what happened? They didn't get burned up. They didn't get burned up. Because God was with them in the fire. Yes. And that's what happens with us. Is sometimes we decide not to go with what the group is doing. Because we don't think it's right. And you know what? Even though they may make fun of us or they might not be nice to us, God is with us. Okay? Even though it doesn't involve flame or fire, God is with us when we do what's right. Even when we do what's wrong, God is still with us. But in our story, we hear about these three guys who won't do what the king says because they feel that that's not what God said. That's pretty good, huh? Yeah. All right. Well, you guys can head on back to your seats. Be careful around the... There you go. Yep. And you guys have a great day, okay? All right. Thanks for coming up, everybody. Our faith is a faith of stories. And in Advent, we're going to be hearing different stories. And this one begins in an empty palace room of the king of Babylon. How did it come to this? How did we get here? I thought you were great. You were the God of gods. And I made you a giant obelisk, a giant statue, 90 feet by 90 feet. And yet, what do you stand for? These three men, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, they've shook me to the very core. And you stand in silence. How? How could this happen? I made you so all people could see your glory. I had them worship with every musical instrument of every social class. Everyone was represented, except for these three men. He told me of this God who saves, this God who is greater than you. They refused to worship you, Baal. They refused. So what did I do but what any king would do? Those who do not listen are destroyed. So I bound them. I heated the furnace extra hot. You know what happened? Nothing. They weren't burned. And I swear there was a fourth. My guards, they died instantly because of the heat from the fire. Yet these three souls weren't touched. They didn't even smell like smoke. And this fourth person, who was he? What was it? Was it an angel? Was it a mirage? Or was it their very God dwelling with them? Would you dwell with me? For Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego have a God who would come into the very flame and sit with them and keep them safe. Yet here you stand for nothing. Now, how could this be? I told everyone. Everyone came. Some of their brothers and sisters bowed before you, casting aside this idea of Yahweh, Elohim. But not these three. They stood. And what baffles me is why. Why would they stand up to you? Why would they stand up to me? I appointed these men over my provinces. These were learned men. They knew what happened to those who would stand against their king. And yet, they did it anyway. Why? How strong these men must have been. Was it their faith that was so strong that protected them from the flames? No. Couldn't have been. My faith in you yet shaken this very day by a God I do not understand. My faith is not strong enough. So maybe it wasn't so much their faith after all. Maybe it was the faith of their God in them. How did we get here? I sit talking to myself in an empty palace, shaken to the very core by three men. What do you stand for? What do I stand for? But there's no question in my mind with those three men, what and who they stand for. Someday you will topple and fall. Someday I will be destroyed. But what these three men have done today will stand the test of time. They will tell stories of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. What have I? What have you? Maybe I need to learn more about this God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. A God who's willing to step into the very flame. A God who sits with God's people in the depth, fear, who doesn't just stand distant for all the world to see. Whose God is stronger? I think I know the answer, and it shakes me to the core.